G'day everybody, thanks for stopping by. Today's video is going to be a quick look at the install and review of the Auxbeam switch panel, which they sent me out for the purpose of review. Now up in the corner you're going to see that it says this video includes a paid promotion. I don't get paid for these things, but if you receive anything of value that you didn't pay for, you need to tick that box on YouTube these days, and it just puts up this paid promotion thing. So I didn't receive any funds for this, it's just that I received the product without having to pay for it, so I have to tick that box. I've been shooting this video over a number of different weeks and a number of different days. I did an unboxing and all that sort of stuff. Unfortunately I lost some of the footage, so I've just had to duck out and do this quick intro now. I'll give you a look at the product itself, we'll talk about what's in the box, and of course briefly we'll touch on the install through the video as well, and we'll give you a look at what the end result is. Alright, here we go. Let's have a look at the Auxbeam switch panel that was sent out to me. Cheers guys. I'd really like to be starting a new car and starting a build on a new car, and if I get around to getting a new car eventually, or another car, this is what I use for my switching. I'd have one of these at the front, I'd have one of these in the bonnet nearest my main battery, and I'd have one or two of these over the back. Literally everything you need is in the packet. So these are going to be our mounting points obviously for our power. It's going to come from our lithium batteries. This would be ideal for doing a lithium setup if you want to do like a remote thing. Like if you wanted to cart that box around, put it in a portable box, throw one of these in the build, have that switch panel on the outside and just run your wires in, or whether you wanted Anderson plugs or whatever it is, and then just run them to this inside. But you can set this up inside with the battery, have that little switch panel on the outside of the box, and then just run your wires off this, whether it be Anderson plugs or whatever, and just have them switchable from inside the box. Okay, interesting, this is 12 and 24 volts. So we've got different ratings on the different fuses. You've got two of each, so you've got 230s, 20s, 10s and 5s. Nice to see that it written on the actual panel itself somewhere, so you know which fuse is in what. You know, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's nice, so you can actually see which number is going to correspond to which switch up here. Yeah, this is a really solid bit of kit. I think that's still metal on the back. The front half is plastic though. These are your main connections for our battery feed. They supply you with cable for powering the unit, which is nice, good sized cable. That feels like it's about a 4 gauge or something, I would say. At a guess, a couple of A&L or MIDI fuses, which is what that actually has. Now, typically I don't like these type of fuse holders, these plastic type ones. They come in the cheaper kits for, you know, doing car stereos and stuff like that. If you get one of these units and you want to put it under the bonnet, my recommendation is don't use this fuse holder. Go and get yourself a different one, a proper A&L one, and I'll show you what one of those looks like, because these get brittle in the heat under the bonnet, and then they eventually just shatter and they're just useless. So get yourself a different one. And the good news is though, they supply with a couple of extra fuses, and they are 60 amp, so they're very serious about limiting you to 60 amp through this switch panel. And you get a set of fuses there as well. Now these are the micro blade fuses, so if you need to buy some additional ones of them, they're all supplied in the kit. There's the wire that we're going to run from the switch panel down to the fuse block. Get a whole bunch of bolts and screws and stuff, pretty much everything you're going to need to get this mounted up. Nice little bracket, so a couple of screws, that mounts on. There's 4 holes in the back of this which mounts on like that, and then you can obviously angle it however you want. And you've also got this additional really solid bracket that if you wanted to use that to mount you know, possibly up on the dash or somewhere like that. A heap of cable ties there as well. There's an adder fuse in there, and heaps of different stickers for throwing on these. So these are clear through the writing, so when you throw those on, they're going to light up. So what I'm looking to do is maintain that switch panel for some of the lights that I've already got, and using this one for additional lights and some additional accessories. This will be I guess my camp light switch panel, and for other accessories that I might use for the camp light scenario. And I'm thinking about putting it here. So ultimately the purpose of the Auxbeam switch panel is to be able to set this up in the car somewhere, or remotely, typically inside the car, and then have your switch panel, your fuse panel, your control panel, whatever you want to call it, remote. So this can be out in the engine bay, and all you got to do is run this one wire from the switch panel out through your firewall or remotely to the switch panel, and that's all you got to do. So you've just got to run that one wire. Obviously, if you had 8 relays like you've got in this switch panel, and you had those out inside the engine bay, for example, and then you wanted 8 switches inside, you'd have to run 8 feed wires inside to the car so you could switch those relays on, or activate, charge those relays and get them to switch on. So this solves that. And so obviously there's going to be multiple cores in this, and that's going to allow us to switch whatever we want on from this control panel remotely. So with that in mind, the switch panel is going to be up here. This is going to be down with our lithium box, our lithium battery, and I'm going to use this just to switch some external lights at this point. I haven't got a heap of stuff to put on this, but at this point we're going to switch the external lights, which I'm going to chuck on the outside of the car now, and possibly my HF radio. And that's going to free up a few of those switches that we've already got set up over in the corner. I would have loved to have had 1 or 2 of these for a really sweet setup over the back. If I ever get a new car, I'll take these out with me and they'll go with me. If I had been aware of this when I did that other switch panel, it would have made everything so much easier. Because you can see that switch panel in the corner. So obviously I've got multiple wires running up to feed that. I think I split that up into 2. So I've got 2 feed lines going to those. They're all separated and going out to the individual feed lines. Had to add fuses and all that sort of stuff. With this, you've got your relays, you've got your fuses, and it just simplifies everything. It's just so much easier. So I would have, and ultimately, I think that looks prettier than that. Granted, I've got all these wires and charge cables and everything coming off that, so I'm happy with that the way it is. Ultimately, this is my charge corner. So you can see we've got the charger for the GoPro batteries. I've also got the charger on the other end for my Sony batteries. There you can see my modem. It's just dropped off and fallen on the ground. The Velcro stuff hasn't worked real well, so I need to get that mounted up again. And we also had an output here that was just used for an auxiliary on an Anderson plug, but that now runs the road shift. Just because that was easier. I may eventually run that wire up in behind or give it a separate feed or something like that. That we can have 230s, 220s, 210s and 2.5s in this as far as current draw, albeit that we can only draw a maximum of 60 at any one time. We could happily run the fridge, which is going to be pulling about 4 or 5 amps maximum when it's cycling. We're going to be running the road chef, which will pull about 10 amps. Not obviously going to be running anything like a compressor off this. I think that my compressor pulls 40 something plus, but we could certainly use this to charge that other relay that we've got over in the corner, which I might do. That would look much nicer. All I have to do is disconnect the feed line that I've got from over at that one and then just run it down to this one, so that'll make that much nicer. So we might do that. We might switch the compressor over as well. The other switch panel that we've got over there in the corner, that will take, those switches are rated at 20 amps per switch. But when you have a look at those, you need to be wary because they are just fed with the one line, which means if you feed that one line and you loaded each of those switches up to 20 amps, that's 120 amps you're pulling through that, and certainly the feed line is not capable of handling that. Now when you're mounting the bracket, you need to make a choice as to where you would like the cable to go, whether you would like it to go down below, in which case you route it down there, or if you want it to go upwards. Rather than going up over the top of the rack, I've still routed it out the top of the switch panel, but I've gone over that and then under the rack itself. I think that's just going to be the best. It's going to stay away from any sort of edges there, and it saves me having anything hanging over the top of the rack. It doesn't sit too proud of the rack itself, so it's not going to stop me putting anything in there at all. I think that looks quite nice. Actually, I think the finish of that matches up nicely with the rack there as well. I know it's getting a bit stupid now, but imagine having like 4 of these or something all along the back. Switch panels, lights, whatever. Anyway, so you can see over in the corner I've got the road chef going at the moment. I'm just trying to cycle, while the Pajero's just sitting here, I'm just trying to cycle the lithium batteries a little bit, give them a bit of something to do, so they're not constantly sitting at 100%. because the summer's coming and the sun's coming up, and I'm finding that solar panels now starting to do its thing. So okay, so it's other day, and Auxbeam has just been giving me a bit of a hurry up, saying sent it to you a while ago, can you get a review done? So I said yes I can. The reason it's taken a little while is I've had some stuff on order. So we've got several boxes of things that we've ordered and that we're going to use. So the first ones, we've got these little 10 watt mini floodlights from Steady. They were about $35, $39 each, so it cost me around about the 70 bucks for the two of those. I've got to tell you, they're an absolutely beautiful looking little light. So that's what they look like there. So we've got two of those, and we've got two of these little generic eBay cube lights. These are a 10 watt Cree, supposedly just a single LED inside there. These aren't solid as a rock, but what you can see, like compared to the Steadies, which are just perfection really, they just look beautiful. You can see here this thing looks like it might have taken a hit. You know, we've got some sort of discoloration here, and that lens just isn't sitting right on there. These were around about, I think it was 25 bucks or something for two. So ultimately for, you know, what you could buy probably 6 of these, you're going to get 2 of the Steadies. And then we've got these Nikoko monstrosities, which are an 18 watt LED white in the middle, and then we've got the coloured LEDs around the outside. So we're just having a look up here to see whether the Steadies are a little bit lower profile than the eBay cheapies. You can see on these ones how low that bracket sits. So that's the holes there, so it sits about that much higher than the actual light itself. So these ones, I can actually get this up under here and have that mounted, and I think we're going to do that. So we might use the eBay cheapies. We'll just put both of those on the other side, but for now, yeah, we can work with this on this side. I got to tell you, I think I've just sold myself on a couple of more of these. Just a nice looking light, and I think I'll probably wire up. I'll get another 2, put one on the other side. I'll put another one on the back here too, I think. Yeah, they just look real good. Not that I've got anything against that. You can see how much lower profile the Steady ones are compared to that one. And they're just, I'll be able to get them up and under the rack and out of the way. I think just makes that whole install just look that much cleaner. I'm that impressed with the Steadies. I'll show you what I'm doing. My order is in. So that tells you what I think of those Steadies. I've just gone out before I've even turned them on. I have done the light test out the back, but before I've actually used those in situation, because they're so nice, they're so easy to work with, they're so low profile, all of the above, I've just gone and ordered another 2 so I can have 4 for the vehicle. So done. That's what I think of the Steadies. Okay, so we've switched around to pulling our old fuse panel out, which was an A&L one, 4 junctions. Switching over for the 8, because I think we can get away with that. Other than the inverter, this is going to be the only other feed that I'm taking off this lithium battery set. This is where the feed goes for the power. Now there's no cover for that. See here where the negative goes into that. You can see the case then comes over and covers that connection altogether. So if you've got any wire exposure or anything like that, it's protected by that case. Now this one might actually end up going up the front of the vehicle. But you can see there, once that's put on, that covers up all your connections. But you can see the power connections are going to be left exposed. So this is going to be inside the vehicle at the back, where I've got tools and stuff. And those are going to be exposed. So what I've actually got, and this is just from J-Car, it's like a webbing strap. I don't know whether it offers any heat protection, but it's just like a shrink wrap. So I'm going to cut some of that. Once I make that connection to that point, I'm going to slide some of this over it and then heat shrink it. So that'll be sealed up permanently. I'll still be able to cut into it if I need to move it or something, but I'll just disconnect it from the other end. I take that back because they do supply you with 2 nice pieces of heat shrink. Already covered mine up, and I'm happy with that stuff. I think that probably protects it a little bit better than this. It's more abrasion resistant, but you do have your 2 pieces of heat shrink, which are going to go over your feed cables and cover those terminals. So that's good. So I was going to call that a negative. I would still like to see some sort of hard protection, like a cover or something, but that might impact on your ability to get sort of that sort of larger gauge wiring. But anyway, I'd like to see it be a bit more waterproof. That doesn't matter, that's not in the design specs, so that's not an issue. It's good that you can just flick the button, turn everything on that you had switched on, or hit it again and turn everything off. But what I'm noting is that this 12 volt feed, this little 12 volt feed that you see here, has to be connected to power up the switch panel here. Now that switch panel needs to be powered up like that to be able to turn your accessories on. So for that switch panel to work, it needs to be lit up. Now that's a bit of a challenge for me because I was going to leave this connected permanently, maybe have a light switch on it somewhere, and look, I can certainly put an inline switch somewhere to flick it on and off, or I can run it over to that over there. It's only like a small, only going to be a small draw, but the switch panel won't work without being lit up. Even if I turn it off, it stays lit up. Which this is all good if you want to use it as an accessory type thing, and it is typically made for, like I said, putting over in the engine bay and controlling all these different lights. So your driving lights, your light bars, lights on the roof, all that sort of stuff. This is where this really shines. But that's also, at this stage, for me, going to be a bit of a letdown because it's not going to really work without some additional effort on my behalf to not have it lit up like that. So if I want it to work, it's got to be lit up, and I don't like that. Okay, so it says the backlight brightness of the switch panel is automatically dimmable according to the brightness variation of the surroundings. So as in the tunnel or dark vision, the switch panel will dim. In daytime or other bright places, the switch panel will be brighter, making it easier for you to see. So apparently this little thing here, okay, so you can see that if we cover that up, take that away, it brightens up, cover that up. Still not going to turn off though, is it? So I've got the option of either having a switch on that, switching the whole panel off, which doesn't work if I want to switch the fridge. If you want to use it on the front of the car, the switching lights, and have it work off your accessory, great, perfect, beautiful. But for what we want to do here, it's not really going to work, and I've just stripped all the wiring out of the car. Anyway, I've got stuff to do. This is a problem for tomorrow. Talk to you soon. Okay, it's the next day, so I went down to Supercheap and just picked up some wire. I was going to go to J-Car, but they didn't have exactly what I wanted, so I just went to Supercheap, and I've just picked up some Nava stuff. It was like 22 bucks or something for 10 meters of it, and I've just gone with the 10 amp stuff. That's going to be plenty for the lights that we're going to run. I've gone with the twin core stuff because ultimately what I've done is I've grounded the rack up top down to the chassis down here, just inside the door, to one of the screws on the door, and I've got a bolt up there, or a screw up there, that screws in, and I sort of use that as a bus bar effectively, and then that whole aluminium rack is grounded. So what I do as far as my LED stuff is I literally just run power to it and then I ground it back to the frame itself, just with a screw somewhere else. Typically I'll go back to that same screw, but I've realised I've now put the water tank and the solar panel over the top of that screw, so I can't get to it. So we'll just ground these somewhere near that, or somewhere near the lights themselves, and they'll be fine. So we don't actually have to run 2 wires up and back for each of the LEDs, we just need to run one positive. So with these being 2 core, 10 amps, what we can actually do is, so I've bought 2 lots of it just in case, so we've got 20 meters, got plenty. So what I'll do is just run 2 lots of this up, and that'll give me 4 cores. Conveniently, we're going to have 4 lights. So, okay, so that's our main switch. So you can see that one is now powering this switch panel over here. that's our two outside lights wired up, so they're steady on that side, eBay cheapy on that side, steady on the back. Steady on the back, steady on the left, eBay cheapy on the right. Okay, so we've stuck just a few of the stickers on, and I can tell you that if you put them in the wrong position, you can peel them off and stick them back on. But I wouldn't recommend it. They're quite thick. Like I said, they're like a thick plastic or a vinyl. So I suppose that's going to solve some of my brightness issues that I had once I've put all those on. Alright, so we're going to... I've got some 6BNS that goes to the Anderson plug on the back. Because it was running direct off the battery. Through its own fuse, obviously, so, and that big fuse with A&L fuses, so it had plenty of room as far as that fuse box or fuse panel, fuse distribution panel, whatever you want to call it, goes. So I'm going to have to see if I can fit 6BNS under these terminals. So it's not made for it. 30 amp is most, and you don't need that sort of rated cable for that, but that's what I've got, and that's what I want to try and feed it. So I would have a maximum of 30 amps at that Anderson plug at the back, which is plenty, more than enough. And I've overrated my cables, which is what I like to do. I don't think many people are going to do it, but it's just going to be good to know. So, just to show you, these are the screws we're working with. So I guess that's the depth of cable you can fit under there. I think you're getting 6 under there, it's just not going to work. It just can't get under that terminal. So what we might do, because we are going to limit ourselves to the 30 amp, I might downgrade that wire at some point and rerun it, and it's just going to make everything easier. So for now, that's just going to remain disconnected. So this is now what the boot looks like. This is the feed for my HF radio, which I still need to put back in, and we need to lift everything up to extend that so that'll reach the fuse box there. That's our obviously our inverter over there. It's our King's 1500. I think that cost me about $10 at Bunnings or something like that. So it's just a double adapter effectively with a slight extension cord, and it's got a couple of USB ports on it. So that typically rides just in the corner there. I am possibly thinking about wiring that up and just having that up here somewhere, but whatever. There is our fuse panel. So this is the feed coming in from the DC-DC charger. This is our feed, our positive, going down to our control panel. Here's just some wires coming in this side. I've cut a little hole there and brought those in, so that just needs tidying up. But again, I'll wire up the steadies, and once I've got those, I'll make that a little bit neater. So this is our feed for our switches over there on the right, and this is obviously our other light on the other side. So that's what that looks like in position. There's lots of guys out there that'll do a cleaner job than I will, a much cleaner job. One of my mates is absolute master of wiring that all line up and that all look great. That's never really been my thing. I'm more a case of just get it in, get it done, make sure it's safe, make sure it's fused and all that sort of stuff. You know, use a heavy gauge wiring, all that sort of business. But pretty's never really been my thing. Sometimes not pretty saves space, if that makes some sort of sense. It certainly saves time, and sometimes it saves space. Because, you know, I'd have to route wires, I'd have to have a raised area so I could have all the wiring in the back and stuff like that. My four-wheel drives tend to be something that just evolve, and so they get bits added left to right and centre, and I'm constantly adding things, which means, you know, patchwork kind of gear. And I guess for this switch panel that we've just installed, it was kind of the same. I had to pull out that other fuse panel, and we've added this in, and then I've rerouted some other wires. I still haven't rerouted the wire for the compressor yet. We've still got to do the thing for the HF, but I'm just running out of time and running out of light, and ultimately I just need to wrap this up. It's a switch panel. I just wanted to show you how that works. So that's it. So that's the Auxbeam switch panel. Really happy with it, with the exception that the lights stay on all the time. That's not an Auxbeam issue necessarily. It's just the method in which I've used it, or the use case scenario that I've put it to. If this was running off the auxiliary battery and you were using the adder fuse that you have, and it was going to come on with the ignition, that wouldn't be an issue. So if you're using it for its exact purpose, absolutely brilliant. And now, as far as being able to have 8 switches in your car and run one wire through that firewall out to the back, you know, you've seen the competitors, you've seen your rest pods and all that sort of stuff, and you know how expensive they are if you've been in the market. If I was doing another car, doing a new car, I'd go with something like that up the front. But because I've used the switch panel from Colin, the aftermarket switch panel from Colin that he makes that you put in that card section, video up there, and I've reused a lot of the factory stuff, and I've gone and purchased factory switches to replace, you know, to put things in for lights and all that sort of stuff. I wouldn't go and remove. I like it looking factory up the front, but if I hadn't done all that, I'd be more than happy to grab one of these, or two of these, maybe even three of these, but I wouldn't mind two of these sitting over the back. If I had have had that before I put that switch panel over here in the corner, that switch panel wouldn't be there. It just wouldn't. I'd have one of those. The current limit of 60, probably not really going to impact me. The instruction manual needs to tell you that the polarity of the connections change from side to side, so just be aware of that. No biggie, you'll figure it out eventually. There you go. So that is the Auxbeam 8-gang switch panel from Auxbeam, obviously. So there you go, links down in the description. This is an out-of-the-box solution for you. So if you want to run a heap of lights up the front of your four-wheel drive, if you want to run a heap of lights up the front of your four-wheel drive, and you don't want to add all the different switches and run all the wires in and out of the firewall, go with one of these. Bloody brilliant. So that is it, guys. Thanks very much for stopping by. We'll get around to those Nakoko coloured LED lights a little bit later on. So I've got to go and pack all that up, and then what I've got to do is go and move the Festiva to get the Commodore to get the Pajero out. No Tirana here. Might make sense to some Aussies. Dad, plug another hole. It's filling up with water. And the question you have to ask yourself, is your trunk up? If they can make one that cleans up after you've done the install, I'm in. And I've got to tell you, this area over the back, for me, is really starting to become something. I'm really starting to get a bit, I'm starting to be happy with this space. There's still little things that I want to do, that I want to tweak. Is starting to get to where I'm pretty happy with it. So please, if you see me on the road, don't run into me, because I don't want to start again. But there you go. Pretty happy with that. But for now, thanks very much for stopping by, and we'll catch you on the next one. Cheers.